Hello, hello, hello. It's episode 2 of Clatfartburg time, and we're here once again to bring you the last 15 minutes, not the last, that was insane.
Whoa.
The first 15 minutes of episode 2. To once again remind you, we have a new podcast, Clatfartburg, and it is out on all platforms now for real this time. Last time there was some issues and it took like a day, but it is on all platforms definitely now. This episode, we're talking about the Clatfartburg Museum.
And go head over there. And also, you can follow Clatfartburg on Instagram. And the TikTok is actually what it was, Wonka Watch, but now it's Clatfartburg. So same feed, different name. But
you probably already follow it.
You do. But the Instagram is fresh and new. Having a lot of fun posting things and little captions and ditties. So go forth. And if you feel friendly and fun, if you want to give us a little review, since this is a new baby.
Definitely helps.
Definitely helps. So
helps a lot.
Hugs to all of you. Thank you. And enjoy. Hello, I'm Eileen Wurst.
And I'm Genevieve Bargello.
And we're here to predict the news.
Welcome to CFB News. Recently, Clatfartburg had its annual Crispy Fest, but things did not go according to plan.
Families have come forward discussing that their children were stuck in pipes and tunnels set up by one of the 8 plumbing companies in Clatfartburg called the Plumbing Company. Though the children were able to be removed near the end, it was a bit of a sticky situation. And those tunnels, they are, according to my notes, still in the ground.
The big tree that hosts all the predictions that sources were not able to get the name of. The predictions were scattered after a big gust of wind came from the helicopter carrying us, the CFB News anchors. We did release the Big Crispy into the air, but he was dashed up by the blades of the helicopter and did cause havoc at the festival.
One vendor on the scene, Nancy Pankin, owner of Pankin's Napkins, discussed how the wind and gust bursted all the napkins and caused destruction across the vendors, including the artisanal ketchup vendor, Le Marc Rouge, as well as the entire meat carvers who are out there carving some meats over there also by the Plaque Station. Correct, Genevieve?
Eileen, can I correct you there? There weren't any meat carvers, there were wood carvers, but I can understand the confusion as a load of fried food trucks came in from out of town, misreading Crispy Fest as being a fried food festival and mistakenly entered into the crispy competition, the crispy carving competition, thinking it was a meat carving competition, so they did put meat onto the wood sculptures. There was another issue with the food trucks. Families were scandalized after seeing the big fuck fish truck at the event, and it's not for the reason you think. Crispy Fest has long banned fish-based products from being sold at the event due to the fish-based nature of it and out of respect for Crispy. The big fuck fish truck did not respect the festival's culture, and while it was not ousted, it was given quite the side eye.
And so, yes, that was the news.
That was the news, Eileen. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks. Very light schedule on the news here.
This was CFB News.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Clatfartburg. This is the Comedy World Building Podcast from me, Felicia.
And Elaine.
I had an experience this week that felt very Clatfartburg. I want to share it with you all. I went to the eye doctor, and I already went there and I got my prescription checks. We were all good, so I was just there to pick up my glasses. And I walked in at 11 o'clock, and then I proceeded to reject every option presented in front of me. And then I was out the door at 11:20. And it felt very Clatfartburg to me, the experience. As I could tell, the optician was getting increasingly upset at me, immediately rejecting each glasses. But I have glasses I'm currently happy with, and sometimes we don't like change.
Yeah, indeed.
So anyway, this episode is about a museum, and that's so linked. It's so linked, and I want you to think about it. Glasses, what do people who work at museums wear? They wear glasses, and that's how it's linked.
Yes. And as we all know, museums are a wonderful place to educate yourself and learn about maybe where you live, aspects about the nature, the history, what have you, innovations. And what better way to learn more about this quirky town than to dive into this beautiful museum that we're about to create together. Felicia and I have set up some artifacts and part of a children's exhibit as well to kind of just see what we're going to do. But let's start off by just discussing about the museum itself. How, I imagine based on what I've written, this museum has to be a little big. A little bit. It has to be a little bit.
I was picturing a little dinky, so this is good. Yeah. This will be fun for us to work
we
together.
Can work with this. If it's a little dinky, and then it has this random bigger building in the way back, like there's a parking lot, and then there's the other part.
So I've been thinking.
I think that's perfect.
I've been thinking. I went a very history bend with mine. I feel like the Science Museum is a different place. Are we on the same page with that, or are we not? Okay.
We have a blend.
We have a general museum then that's perfect. This is the big Clatfartburg Museum. I think this is then not in the main town. You got to go to it, and you do have to pay for parking. That's kind of the scale I'm thinking. Parking is paid here.
Yes. Yeah. There might be a shuttle, but it's never running, but there are signs and claiming it's free. So people wait for this shuttle, and then it never comes.
Yes. Very sizable gift shop, which is great. That's the place where you actually get good crispy merch. This is the place. So
yes,
that I feel good about that. I'm thinking, is it like experimental architecture? Is it one of those?
I think so. I imagine maybe we started off with some like older classic, like, you know, the one in Animal Crossing, let's say. You've got some pillars, you know, what you imagine. But then over the years, people thought they could like modify it. So there's still parts of the old, but then you have random like shiplap, Art Deco, like whatever, like horrible 70s architecture thing going on. Like I imagine it being like morphed. No architect could like stay for longer than 6 months. Projects were abandoned. I imagine funds come and go. So yeah, I can imagine that the museum is trying to go more with this eclectic vibe, but it sort of looks like
especially because it is both a history and a science museum. It's kind of an anything.
Well, there were 2 founders of the Clatfartburg Museum.
Of course,
and they could not decide on what was more important, and they wanted to try to, you know, have both in there, and it wasn't big enough for the 2 of them. And there's beef there
because there's always beef in Clatfartburg,
right? I don't know much about the museum community. I can see them both being very nice and lovely, and then also just being petty as fuck about some shit. Like, you're not about to get access to my archives. Are you kidding me? This is my precious thing, you know?
Yeah. Big debate over whether we post the public domain images. That's a big debate going on there right now.
Yeah.
I also, this is a weird call. I think the water fountains at this place are deeply ineffective.
Ooh,
you ever go to a museum and you're like, what the hell is this? I like that I've turned into Seinfeld right now. But like,
you like turn it on and it slightly bubbles, but it's not actually like
and if you wanted,
air.
You would have to like put your whole mouth around it and suck it out to get any water out of this.
One of those.
So that's just a side note. I think the water fountains here really don't work, which is funny because I want them to have a big water area because no science museum is complete without a big water play place. Oh, Elaine.
Oh, that's interesting. That might come into play a bit.
How exciting. Elaine, there's got to be a big train you can walk through in this museum. There's got to be.
Oh, fuck yes. There has to be a train. Okay, you walk into the lobby. Some people have giant dinosaur skeletons. There's a fucking train in this.
I have a pitch for the lobby, though. I have a pitch for the lobby.
Okay.
I think there's a giant crispy hanging from the ceiling. And on one side, it's crispy. And then you go to the other side, and you can see a skeleton and organs.
Can you walk in it?
I did not think so. Have you ever been to the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia? Because that one you can walk through a model of the human heart. That's a fun one.
God.
And you can also go through a big train and play a lot of train games, which I love. And I'm like, next time you're here, we'll have to go.
We will have to do that.
We will have to see every train-related activity in the region because there's so many.
Okay, so do we want that? Is the train like on the front lawn? Then?
Well, I actually have another pitch with the train. So I have a train-related pitch later. I just also think there's a big train they can walk in a building, in a room once, you know.
Like it's a doorway? Like you enter the train to enter a room to then...
Yes, that's what it is now. So that's the way you enter to the other thing I'm going to pitch later.
I love it. Perfect.
This museum is fucking crazy already. I want to go so bad. Can you walk through the model crispy? This is a question I was not expected to confront. I was kind of picturing him hanging from the ceiling a little bit.
Same. What if you get a terrifying catwalk? So not a lot of people want to do it, but you have a terrifying catwalk and then you can kind of like, you know, grip onto the like little bars to go through it.
Or another thing.
Okay.
This thing is fucking huge, okay? And then this is a 2-floor museum, 2 or 3-floor museum. And it's the bridge across. There's a bridge across and a big open area. And then you walk through Crispy that way and you go through his mouth and come out his butt.
Perfect.
Isn't that
that's
great?
So perfect. Yeah. And there's like little mists inside. So you get like a little misty.
Sure. I'm okay with there being mists inside. I can accept there being mists inside.
That sounds like you're making a huge sacrifice.
It's so visceral because remember, we're walking through his organs. So it's not like, oh, we're walking through the water. We're getting wet from his organ juice.
Maybe they didn't fully think that through.
Okay.
Maybe once it was going, they were like, oh, wait, people aren't going to think about the ocean. They think this is like organ juice known as maybe blood. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's to say? Okay, well, maybe they like try to turn them off and then someone tries to keep turning them on. And it's this museum is not coherent. The staff is like at war with each other.
Very much.
And it's shocking.
There's an art wing in the basement that 2 people know about. I don't think anyone's visited in years.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a hierarchy in the place. Science is on top, history's in the middle, art is on the bottom.
Yes.
And ain't that the world?
Them's the rules.
All right. So this is great because we've accidentally embodied the warring founders, I feel like, as you taking on the science approach and me taking on the history approach.
Yeah. Well, mine kind of, I have like,
you straddle.
Mine, I hop around.
Okay.
So I actually have one for each floor at this point is kind of how it's set up.
Oh, that's incredible.
This is interesting.
I mean, mine could. Yeah, mine could. All right.
We'll see. I'm sure they'll interact with each other and create new abominations. So
I'm gonna start with the least exciting one I have.
Sure.
And I'm open to suggestions on what you think this should contain. But I think there is somewhere in, I guess, the history section, the original recipe for Clatfartburg chowder, an innovative Depression-era recipe made from, and I'm open to suggestions here, my current picks are pudding and broccoli rabe. No seafood.
That's perfect.
Okay.
It's disgusting.
And again, Clatfartburg they want everyone to think they're coastal so bad. Not coastal. Not a coastal town.
There's a lake.
There is a big lake.
Yeah.
And they pretend it's a coast.
Yeah.
But it's not. You would think with all their branding, they're a seafood place. They're not.
No. They're just really leaning into it. That's perfect. I imagine that occasionally the museum will host like little mini galas as big as you can in Clatfartburg.
Well, I think the Clatfartburg chowder is like pretty well known. Like I think it's a dish. Like if you go to the big diners in the area, you can get Clatfartburg chowder. Like it's like they'd be like, get your authentic Clatfartburg chowder at, like.
Is this that thing where like natives really like it and everybody else thinks it's just disgusting, but since you're there, you have to have it?
And they all keep going like, we're the real Clatfartburg chowder because the real Clatfartburg chowder is bad. So most places, we've updated the Clatfartburg chowder. No. Give me the original shit. And to get the original shit, you need to go to a very specific diner that I'm sure we will come up with later. That I'm sure we'll know eventually.
It'll have its little sign, home of the original Clatfartburg chowder.
Yeah, it was founded by old Meemaw something, like.
I imagine it has to have a certain like serving dish as well. The way you have to have, different alcohols go in different shaped glasses. Like
it's fish shaped. This town has no originality or imaginative. And it's not because I'm not imaginative. It's they're really fixated on the fish. And if it has Clatfartburg, it has to have Crispy in there. And yes, Crispy has been around since at minimum 1920. If we're going with this being Depression era, he is not a new invention. Oh my God. What if his origin was like a Sunday Funnies comic strip? I've never thought about that, but that is really compelling to me.
Yes.
We don't need to nail into it. But I think that is a very compelling origin story for Crispy.
It's interesting because I had an original idea that could possibly play into why he's also named Crispy. So I think we can put that as a pinpoint. Come back to that at a later date because
maybe a newspaper Sunday Funnies.
Yes, and
Crispy's from the Sunday Funnies.
Crispy Oodalali. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. It's all making sense now.
I feel good about that. All right.
Nice. Okay.
So not many more notes on that, but there is a classic dish, the Clatfartburg chowder, made of pudding and broccoli rubs.
I love it. Okay. I guess just as a side note too, this is a like 0.25% artifact, I would say. they have a palm-sized piece of the Berlin Wall, because every museum has a piece of the Berlin Wall, and Clatfartburg dished out an embarrassing amount of money to get a piece of the Berlin Wall so that they could feel like they were a legit museum. So this little piece has its own room. People don't really care because it's small and it doesn't really fit with any of the other like it doesn't flow into anything else.
Clatfartburg is not interested in world issues.
No.
Like Clatfartburg is very self-centered as a town.
Yeah. Does Clatfartburg look down on Europe? Because that was just a random vibe I got suddenly.
Well, there's tension now because of Lamarck Rouge is
exactly
successful, so they can't.
So maybe the younger generation versus the older generation.
They're still mad at the colonies. They're still not over it. There's a subset of older people who are still not over it.
Whoa. Okay, cool. So that was like a mini one. I can go into my next actualized one. So you're walking around, you're in the history section, and you come across a display and you see the Clatfartburg Army uniform. So back in the 17th century, Clatfartburg's greatest export was 1% milk, and this was due to their cows lacking nutrition, so they didn't actually have to do anything. It just automatically was
1% milk exist in the 17th century. Also, the 17th century is the 1700s, you said, right?
Oh, the 19th century. Sorry. So it'd be the 1800s.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Sorry, I wrote that incorrectly. Yeah.
1800s kind of insane.
I meant, gosh, and I worked so hard to make sure I got the centuries right, and then I typed it wrong. Oh my gosh. The Clatfartburg Museum has to have multiple audits and checks on their history. They're not great at writing it down. They just get too excited. So yes, in the early 1800s, this 1% milk was around, and that's what made it so niche. Now, it was hard to sell to people because they were like, why would I care? Because they didn't necessarily care about like low fat anything, because they were just trying to like
survive,
live.
Yeah. Cholesterol was not a thing back then.
No.
They didn't know what the fuck that was. So.
It was more like, how do I not get diphtheria?
Yeah.
So anyway, we've got, obviously, if this is their greatest export, we have a ton of workers who are constantly milking these cows. And there are so many cows that it's interesting. Something starts to morph. You know how right now orcas are unionizing? Like orca whales are, for the first time we're watching them, like they're getting together and like tipping over ships and stuff, which is wild. Okay. These cows start doing the same thing. So the cows get together and they start rebelling.
As they should.
As they should. So they basically form an army.